The story of Geronimo, Crazy Horse, and Sitting Bull cannot be told without first understanding the America they faced, a nation in rapid expansion, driven by the ideals of manifest destiny, the belief that the United States was divinely ordained to stretch from the Atlantic to the Pacific. To many in the 19th century, this was progress. But to the native nations, it was the slow tightening of a noose around their homelands. For the Chiricahua Apache of the arid Southwest, the Oglala and Hunkpapa Lakota of the vast plains, and countless other tribes, the arrival of settlers, railroads, and military forts meant the loss of hunting grounds, the desecration of sacred sites, and the steady erosion of sovereignty. The three men whose lives we follow stood at the spear's point of that conflict, each answering the call to defend his people in his own way, yet all bound by the same unyielding commitment to freedom. Geronimo's transformation from a man of the people into a figure feared by armies was not the work of myth but of relentless will. After the massacre that claimed his family, he honed his skills as a guerrilla fighter. His raids were swift, often striking deep into enemy territory, and his escape routes were as intricate as the desert's winding canyons. American commanders called him the wily Apache, but those who rode with him knew a different man: disciplined, fiercely loyal to his followers, and deeply spiritual. He believed he was protected by a divine power, a conviction that only deepened his fearlessness in battle. Conservative historian Alan W. Eckert wrote, "Geronimo did not fight merely for revenge or plunder. He fought for the survival of his people's independence in a world where every treaty was a trap." In the northern plains, Crazy Horse lived by a code that valued humility as much as valor. He refused to be photographed, believing that such images could steal part of the soul. His leadership was measured not in speeches but in his presence at the front of every charge. In the lead-up to the Great Sioux War of 1876, he became the rallying point for warriors unwilling to accept life on the reservations. His strategy at the Battle of the Little Bighorn displayed a masterful understanding of terrain and timing, drawing Custer's troops into a trap where they were surrounded and overwhelmed. Eyewitness accounts recalled Crazy Horse riding as if touched by no bullet, as if fear itself could not reach him. Historian Joseph M. Marshall III himself, Lakota, described him as a man who carried the weight of his people's future in the way he held his lance. Sitting Bull's role in that same conflict was different but no less vital. As a chief and holy man, his authority stemmed from his ability to unite disparate factions and inspire confidence through spiritual leadership. His vision of soldiers falling like grasshoppers before the battle was not simply prophesied, was a morale weapon, convincing warriors that victory was destined. After Little Bighorn, while Crazy Horse remained in the field, Sitting Bull led his people north into Canada, seeking refuge. His refusal to bend to U.S. authority kept him in exile for years, a constant reminder that the plains could still produce leaders beyond the reach of Washington's control. The eventual downfalls of these men were not the results of battlefield defeat alone, but of the relentless grind of policy and pressure. Geronimo's surrender in 1886 came after years of pursuit by General Nelson Miles and a war-weary band of fewer than 50 followers. He was sent to Florida as a prisoner of war and later became a living relic of the frontier, appearing at fairs and parades of fate that mixed dignity with humiliation. Crazy Horse, wounded by betrayal, was stabbed to death in 1877 while under arrest, his killers acting under the very flag of truce that should have guaranteed his safety. Sitting Bull was shot and killed in 1890 by Indian police during a chaotic attempt to detain him, the final spark in the events that led to the Wounded Knee Massacre. And yet, their stories did not die with them. Each man became a symbol, sometimes romanticized, sometimes vilified, but always potent. Conservative author Theodore Roosevelt, though himself a Rough Rider and veteran of the Indian Wars, wrote in 19, "No man of honest spirit can fail to respect the warrior who fights for his own country, however the tide of history may sweep him aside." That sentiment applies as much to Geronimo, Crazy Horse, and Sitting Bull as to any soldier in American uniform. The connection between these three leaders lies in the timeless nature of their struggle. They were not seeking to conquer new lands or impose their rule on others. Their cause was defensive, rooted in the protection of home, family, and the sacred traditions passed from one generation to the next. In this, they shared an unspoken brotherhood with patriots of every era, those who stand their ground when retreat would be easier, those who see surrender as the one battle that can never be redeemed. Their defiance also raises questions about the price of progress. Was it inevitable that the railroads and telegraphs would come, that buffalo herds would vanish, that the free roving life of the plains and deserts would give way to fenced farms and towns? Perhaps, but inevitability does not erase the nobility of resistance. As conservative commentator Patrick J. Buchanan once wrote, "A nation that forgets those who resisted its wrong turns will not long remember the right ones." In remembering Geronimo, Crazy Horse, and Sitting Bull, we are reminded that America, as his history, is not the story of one people alone. It is a tapestry of countless struggles for liberty, sometimes aligned, sometimes in conflict, but always bound by the belief that a man should be free to live under his own laws. For conservatives, their legacy is not in opposition to the United States, but an affirmation of its founding principle, that the defense of liberty, even unto death, is the highest calling of a free man. Even today, their names live on in schools and towns, in military helicopters and sports teams, in songs and statues. But the true memorial is in the enduring respect for those who choose the harder road of resistance rather than the easy path of submission. They remind us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the will to act in spite of it. And they challenge us, in our own time, to ask whether we would have the same resolve if our way of life were threatened. Because in the end, the lesson of Geronimo, Crazy Horse, and Sitting Bull is not confined to the 19th century. It is as relevant now as it was then. The freedom you inherit can be lost in a single generation if you lack the courage to defend it. And if these warriors, outnumbered and outgunned, could stand their ground against the greatest military power of their age, what excuse do we have to do any less? Even as the guns fell silent and the reservations grew, the stories of these men traveled far beyond their homelands. To the soldiers who once hunted them, they became adversaries, worthy of respect, foes who had fought with a discipline and bravery few could match. To their people, they were anchors in the storm, living proof that dignity could survive defeat. The camps they once defended may have been dismantled, the trails they rode fenced and divided, but their defiance became a kind of inheritance, passed down in the words of elders and the songs of the young. And in that inheritance lies a truth few in Washington of their day cared to admit. No matter how complete the conquest may seem, a people who remember their heroes are never truly conquered. It is tempting, in the safety of the present, to see their resistance as doomed from the start, to write it off as a tragic but futile stand. But such thinking misses the point entirely. The measure of a man is not taken by whether he wins every battle, but by whether he stands when standing is hardest. Geronimo, Crazy Horse, and Sitting Bull each knew the overwhelming force arrayed against them. They knew the cost in lives, in hardship, in exile, and still, they chose the harder path. As conservative thinker William F. Buckley Jr. once said, truth is not a function of majority opinion. In their own time, these leaders were the minority voice shouting against the current, holding to the truth that land, liberty, and honor are not commodities to be traded away for safety. For those who look to history for guidance in the present, their stories serve as a mirror. They force us to ask, what lines would we refuse to cross, even under threat? What ground would we defend, even if the cost were everything? In an era where comfort often dulls the instinct for vigilance, these men's lives remind us that freedom is not self-sustaining, it must be guarded, sometimes at terrible cost. And so, the tale of Geronimo, Crazy Horse, and Sitting Bull is not just an echo of the 19th century, it is a warning, a challenge, and a standard for any generation that claims to love liberty. Their voices may be gone, but the question they leave behind still demands an answer. When the test comes, will we stand as they did?